Once upon a time, in the teeming complexity of Lagos, there lived a man named Suddy. Suddy was not boisterous. His voice rarely rose above a steady murmur. He was naturally reserved, choosing his words sparingly. He had an innate aversion to conflict and unnecessary drama. He was the kind of person who absorbed every detail in his environment, processing the chaos silently while maintaining a deeply unreadable, placid expression. When he was subjected to verbal assaults, he simply offered a short, acknowledging nod. When others attempted to belittle or shame him, he would momentarily drop his gaze, then lift his head again, presenting a front so composed it suggested he was anchoring a tremendous, vital strength deep within himself. Most of the affluent residents in Lagos barely registered Suddy as a complete human being. To them, he was merely an accessory, the driver. Yet, if one took the time to truly observe him, an anomaly surfaced. There was a quiet fastidiousness about him. His work shirts were invariably starched and immaculate. His shoes always polished to a subtle sheen. Even when his attire was the standard simple uniform required by his job, he possessed a unified, collected appearance. He stood with a naturally straight back, projecting a subtle, unwavering dignity. And when he walked, his steps were brisk and measured. He did not shuffle or drag his feet like someone who had resigned themselves to the defeats of life. His eyes were certainly quiet, but they held the unmistakable gaze of a man who was neither fearful nor weak. The fundamental complication was this. Suddy was employed by a woman whose primary satisfaction seemed to derive from treating others with utter contempt. Her name was Adon Bello. Adon was rich, deafeningly loud, and aggressively proud of it. She cultivated an insatiable appetite for the most expensive, branded possessions. She thrived on the spectacle of people supplicating her for aid, as it served to inflate her already monumental ego. She owned a high-profile business specializing in bespoke luxury interior design for Nigeria's elite, decorating opulent mansions, corporate headquarters, and five-star hotels. The circles she moved in were defined entirely by labels, elaborate hair and nail appointments, and the precise hierarchy of seating arrangements at exclusive parties. And in Adon Bello's carefully constructed world, Suddy occupied the absolute bottom rung. That particular morning, Suddy stood sentinel outside her expansive property in Owoyi, positioned beside a black, armored SUV that looked capable of effortlessly crushing and consuming a smaller vehicle. The perimeter gate was intimidatingly high, the compound sprawling, and the meticulously manicured flowers suggested that the entire estate was perpetually poised for an important magazine photo shoot. Suddy glanced at the time displayed on his modest phone, then meticulously wiped an imperceptible speck from the car door panel with a cleaning cloth. It wasn't actually dirty, but the repetitive action was a habit, a ritual of control. He heard the sharp, rhythmic clack-clack-clack of high heels approaching from behind. "Oh, are you blind?" Adon's voice cut through the morning air, sharp and abrasive, like grinding stone against metal. "Why is the vehicle still parked here? I specifically instructed that we depart by 8 o'clock sharp." Suddy turned swiftly, his movement fluid. "Good morning, Ma." "Good morning for who?" Adon snapped back, adjusting her designer sunglasses with undue aggression, despite the soft morning light. "Look at you, standing there like a useless monument. If I am late and miss this crucial meeting, you will personally bear the cost." "Yes, Ma." Sadek replied instantly, his tone perfectly level. Adon subjected him to a slow, critical visual sweep, assessing him with the detached scrutiny one might apply to a damaged piece of furniture. "And what is that shirt? Is this truly the only garment you possess in your entire wretched life?" Sadek glanced down at his shirt. It was freshly laundered, plain white, and neatly pressed. "Ma, it is clean," he stated softly. Adon emitted a short, mean-spirited laugh, devoid of any genuine humor. "Clean does not equate to presentable. You people lack the sophistication to understand the distinction. Something can be clean and still scream shame." Sadek, acting as if the exchange had not occurred, silently moved and opened the rear passenger door for her. Adon entered the vehicle and crossed her legs with a forceful flourish. As he began to walk toward the driver's seat, he heard her phone chirping insistently. She snatched it up, instantly replacing her fury with an saccharine smile, transforming into a completely different persona. "Hello, babe," she purred into the receiver. "Yes, darling, I'm finally on my way. This useless Lagos traffic is already trying me again. My driver will definitely suffer today, I assure you." Sadek's hands tightened almost imperceptibly on the steering wheel for a brief second, a fleeting, contained surge of anger. Then, just as quickly, he forced himself to relax his grip. He eased the massive SUV out onto the road, driving with practiced stability and smoothness. Inside the vehicle, Dawn spoke loudly on the phone, her laughter and shouts resonating as if she intended for the entire street to bear witness to her importance. "Please, don't stress me out," she insisted. "This meeting absolutely must proceed flawlessly. You know how important this client is. Big people despise errors." She paused her conversation and dramatically rolled her eyes, catching Suddy's reflection in the rearview mirror. For that moment, he felt like the physical manifestation of the mistake she was discussing. "Yes, I am still utilizing that same incompetent driver," she continued, lowering her voice slightly but maintaining enough volume for him to hear. I know, but drivers like house slippers are temporary utilities. You wear them out, and when they tear, you discard them." Sadek kept his gaze fixed ahead on the road. After several silent minutes, Dawn ended the call and became engrossed in scrolling through her feed, occasionally typing rapid messages with a small, calculating smile playing on her lips. Suddy recognized that particular smile. It was the look she wore when she was engineering something manipulative. They soon arrived at a soaring contemporary glass tower on Victoria Island, a hub of high finance and corporate luxury. Dawn stepped out and immediately adjusted her expensive dress. She offered no word of thanks. Instead, she merely extended her hand imperiously. "Bring my bag," she commanded. "Yes, ma." Suddy retrieved her massive designer handbag. They entered the building, sweeping into the opulent, silent lobby. Staff members and security personnel instantly greeted Dawn with exaggerated reverence. "Good morning, Mrs. Bello. Welcome, ma." Dawn acknowledged them with a curt, queenly nod. Then, she fixed her gaze on Suddy and hissed a warning under her breath. "Stand one side," she whispered venomously. "Don't obstruct my light." Suddy retreated instantly, positioning himself discreetly along the wall. A man in a tailored suit, clearly a building manager, approached. "Madam, your visitors are already settled upstairs," he informed her. Dawn's face instantly softened, opening up like a curtain revealing a stage show. "Ah, Bisola," Dawn shrieked happily. "My sister, how are you?" They engaged in a dramatic, air-kissing embrace and shared a bout of loud laughter. Bisola then noticed Suddy standing motionless by the door. "Is that your driver?" she asked, her tone as casual and dismissive as if she were inquiring whether the car had functioning air conditioning. "Yes," Dawn replied, waving her hand in a gesture of utter insignificance. "That is just him." Bisola squinted, studying Suddy's face briefly, then shifted her attention critically to his shoes. He looks rather quiet." Dawn scoffed dismissively. "Quiet? He is only quiet because he has absolutely nothing of value to say. What earthly knowledge could a driver possibly possess? His only mandate is to drive and remain silent." Suddy remained utterly still, his eyes fixed forward, a study in disciplined neutrality. Bisola leaned in toward Dawn, dropping her voice conspiratorially, yet still speaking loud enough for Suddy, who was mere inches away, to clearly hear every syllable. "I hope he doesn't smell," Bisola whispered, tilting her head. "Some of them do." Dawn let out a harsh, barking laugh. "If he emits any odor, I will simply roll down the window." Suddy's jaw muscles twitched once, a minute movement that suggested he had just swallowed something unbearably heavy. The elevator doors opened onto a brightly lit, extravagant office floor. Dawn walked into a conference room where 3 important-looking individuals were already waiting. They too exuded wealth, their clothing perfectly tailored, their phones the latest, most expensive models. Dawn's smile was wide, polished, and calculated. "Good morning," I sincerely apologize for the slight delay. Lagos traffic, as you know, is simply wicked. One of the men offered a gracious, practiced laugh. No problem at all, madam. Please take a seat. Adon sat down and immediately launched into a rapid, articulate sales pitch concerning designs, project costs, and timelines. She employed extravagant smiles and an arsenal of honeyed, respectful language, treating these clients with the deference she demanded for herself. Suddy stood posted near the doorway, holding her expensive handbag. After a productive period, Adon's phone rang. She picked it up, initially sounding annoyed by the interruption. Then, her face quickly contorted with concern. "Ah, baby, I'm so sorry. I'm tied up in a meeting," she murmured. She listened intently. Okay. She finished, "I will call you back immediately." She ended the call, then spun around towards Suddy, her expression blazing with manufactured rage. "Why did you fail to remind me that I had a subsequent appointment scheduled?" She barked the accusation. Sadek blinked once. "Ma, you did not inform me of any appointment. Are you daring to talk back to me?" Adon snapped, the sound sharp enough to shatter glass. The clients exchanged uncomfortable, surprised glances. Adon swiftly forced a superficial, apologetic smile toward them. "My apologies, just a small internal issue." She then leaned in close to Suddy, her whisper laced with scalding anger. "Never, ever humiliate me in the presence of important people. Do you understand what I am saying?" "Yes, ma," Suddy replied, maintaining his quiet composure. When the meeting finally concluded, they quickly made their way back downstairs. Adon walked with aggressive speed, as if attempting to outrun the small embarrassment she had just manufactured. The moment they were inside the car, she began complaining again, throwing her phone onto the passenger seat. "You see exactly why I despise having to work with poor people," she ranted. "You people are chronically slow and inefficient." Sadek offered no response. Adon eyed him through the rearview mirror. "Are you angry, Suddy?" "No, ma," he stated simply. "Good," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Because anger alters nothing. Your life remains exactly your life, regardless of your emotions." Sadek's throat moved subtly again. He kept driving. Later that afternoon, they arrived at a luxury shopping mall because Adon was intent on shopping. She entered with Bisola and another friend named Tola. Both women were dressed in outfits so elaborate they looked prepared for a society wedding. Suddy trailed silently behind, designated as the bag carrier. As they walked, the women engaged in loud, proud conversations about parties, men, and fortunes. Their laughter was a bold, arrogant proclamation of their status. Bisola pointed toward a dazzling dress displayed in a shop window. "This is precisely the type of dress I want you wearing for your birthday, Adon." Adon's eyes sparkled with avarice. "My birthday celebration must be massive this year, even grander than last year's event." Tola grinned widely. "Naturally. You are Adon Bello after all." Adon touched her own chest possessively. "Exactly. People must truly feel it. I desire the kind of birthday party that makes social media weep with envy." Bisola laughed approvingly. "Then ensure you invite only the appropriate people. No dullards and certainly no cheap guests." Adon nodded firmly. "Only the very best." Tola glanced over her shoulder and noticed Suddy following dutifully with the growing collection of bags. "Your driver is still shadowing you like a personal bodyguard," she observed, amused. Adon swiveled around and stared at Suddy as if he were an unexpected, irritating stain. "Suddy," she called out. "Yes, ma," he responded. "Or are you fatigued?" she asked, injecting a false, sugary kindness into her voice. "No, ma. Of course you are not fatigued," Adon told her friends, ignoring him completely. "He has no other productive use for his time. This minor chore constitutes his entire universe." The friends dissolved into laughter. Suddy stood utterly still. He neither laughed nor frowned. He simply waited. They entered another high-end boutique. Adon modeled shoes. Bisola modeled handbags. Tola sampled expensive perfumes. They continued their endless, loud conversation, and every word they spoke felt like a small, sharp stone being thrown at someone incapable of defending themselves. As they finally prepared to leave the mall, Dawn's phone buzzed. She checked the message and smiled, that same manipulative, planning smile. Bisola noticed the shift. Why that look? Why are you smiling like that? Dawn raised her phone theatrically. My birthday strategy is getting significantly sweeter. Tola leaned in eagerly. Tell us everything. Dawn looked around the busy mall like she was about to share a classified secret. Then she spoke, lowering her voice, but deliberately loud enough for Suddy to catch every single word. I want to enact something genuinely amusing this year. Something that will be the talk of Lagos. I am going to invite Suddy to my birthday, she announced. Bisola's mouth dropped open in shock. Your driver? Yes. Dawn said, laughing loudly at her own cruelty. Imagine the pure spectacle of him standing awkwardly amidst my exclusive, wealthy guests. Imagine the way he will stand there, utterly lost, holding a wine glass clumsily like some terrified village person. Tola burst into uncontrollable laughter. Dawn. That is truly wicked. Dawn shrugged with theatrical indifference. It will be excellent sport. Let him gain access to a truly grand hall and witness genuine high life. Let him observe how the truly powerful behave. Perhaps it will finally teach him the necessity of knowing his proper station. Bisola clapped her hands together gleefully. I adore this idea. We shall all position ourselves to watch his performance. Tola was still giggling hysterically. He is guaranteed to embarrass himself thoroughly. Dawn's eyes gleamed with malice. Precisely. And the moment he begins to visibly tremble or panic, I will simply smile beatifically and announce, Don't worry, everyone. He's just my driver. Bisola had to wipe tears of laughter from her eyes. Dawn, you are truly a terrible person. Dawn lifted her chin in a gesture of absolute entitlement. Life is not fair. If you find yourself poor, you should simply accept that fate and the consequences that come with it. Sadek stood immobile, holding the heavy shopping bags, listening to every word of his planned humiliation. Dawn suddenly wheeled around toward him, addressing him as if she had just remembered he possessed some semblance of existence. Suddy, she called again. Yes, ma, he replied, his voice flat. Dawn smiled the predatory smile of a satisfied cat. My birthday celebration is next week, she informed him. You are officially invited. Suddy blinked once. Bisola and Tola leaned in, tense with anticipation, waiting for the driver's expected response. Confusion, panic, or a stammered refusal. But Suddy did not panic. He did not plead for an explanation. He did not ask why. He simply nodded and stated with perfect calm, Thank you for the invitation, madam. The three women froze for a split second. This was entirely the wrong reaction. Dawn's triumphant smile tightened, morphing into something brittle. You will be coming, won't you? She pressed. Yes, ma. Sadek repeated, his composure unnerving. Tola frowned slightly. He's acting like this is completely normal. Bisola offered a nervous, strained laugh. Perhaps he doesn't fully grasp the implications of what this means. Dawn waved a dismissive hand, pretending the slight lapse in his expected deference didn't bother her. But her eyes remained fixed on Suddy's face, searching for a sign of weakness. Fine, she said at last. Just ensure you do not disgrace me in any way. Dress impeccably. Do not arrive looking like you recently crawled out of a gutter. Suddy nodded again. Yes, ma. Dawn turned and swept into the car like a conquering victor. Her friends followed, still chuckling and excited by the cruel spectacle they believed was guaranteed. Suddy settled into the driver's seat and started the engine. As he drove them back toward the sprawling mansion, the women continued their animated discussion about the details of the party, who would attend, and, most importantly, how Suddy would inevitably behave. But Suddy did not participate in their laughter. He simply drove. His facial expression remained utterly composed. Yet, deep beneath his calm exterior, something crucial was stirring. And as the sun began its descent and the city's millions of lights flickered to life, Suddy's eyes remained fixed on the road ahead, suggesting that he had already made a decisive choice regarding his next action. Suddy delivered Adon and her companions back to the Awoi house in complete silence. Inside the luxury car, the air was thick with the women's boisterous laughter. They talked over each other, still exhilarated by the anticipation of the birthday party and the humiliation they were certain would be a sweet joke. Every few seconds, Adon's laughter was the loudest, a dominating sound intended to remind everyone who held the reins of power. "Can you even picture his face?" Bisola exclaimed, shaking her head in amusement. "All those major figures, and your driver just standing there," Tola added, stifling a giggle. "He'll probably try to hold the wine glass using both hands." They burst into another round of hysterical laughter. Adon leaned back and crossed her legs, savoring the moment. "Let him come. I intend to thoroughly enjoy every minute of this. Life has been far too predictable lately." Suddy absorbed every single word, but his demeanor never shifted. He kept his concentration on the route, his hands solid and steady on the wheel. Upon arrival at the destination, Adon exited first. She omitted the customary thank you. She always did. She swept into the house with the confidence of someone who believed the house belonged to the world, and the world belonged entirely to her. Suddy parked the vehicle with precision, secured the locks, and followed quietly to deposit the burdensome shopping bags inside the foyer. After completing his tasks, he slipped silently out through the small, inconspicuous gate designated for staff. The affluent street was already calm, hushed by the deepening evening. The warm air hung heavy. Suddy walked slowly toward the nearest bus stop, carrying nothing but the weight of his thoughts. On the long bus ride home, he secured a window seat and watched the complex mosaic of the city roll past. The towering glass buildings of the business district gradually gave way to smaller, functional structures. The bright, high-wattage streetlights diminished into dull, scattered bulbs. The smooth, well-maintained highways dissolved into rougher, neglected side streets. When he finally disembarked, he walked down a narrow, crowded street and stopped before a small, nondescript building. The exterior paint was faded and peeling. The shared concrete stairs were chipped and cracked. Yet it was home. He ascended the stairs and entered his single-room apartment. The room was quiet, permeated by a profound sense of order. A simple bed was pushed against one wall. A small table sat neatly by the window. A mirror hung beside the entrance. Everything was minimal, meticulously clean, and deliberately arranged. Sadek dropped his keys onto the table and sank onto the edge of the bed. For a long moment he simply sat there, breathing slowly and deliberately. Then he laughed. A single soft sound that was not happy, but short and weary. "So," she extended an invitation. He murmured softly to himself, recognizing the inherent absurdity of the gesture. He stood and walked toward the mirror, truly looking at his reflection. "You still look exactly the same, don't you?" he observed quietly. "Nothing has changed." He turned away from the glass and knelt down, pulling out a small, heavy wooden box stored beneath his bed. He dragged it onto the floor. The box was ancient, its edges worn smooth by time. The lock had seized years ago. Suddy opened it carefully. Inside lay objects he hadn't touched in what felt like another lifetime. Faded photographs, a meticulously folded suit bag, and a small, official card bearing his name and a distinctive logo. He picked up one photograph. It showed him much younger, taller, standing confidently under brilliant stage lights. People in the background were clearly applauding. He wore a perfectly fitted suit and was walking across a long runway. Sadek's fingers trembled almost imperceptibly as he held the image. "That was a very long time ago," he whispered. He picked up a second photo. In this one, he was smiling widely, his arm around a woman. His mother. "You always instructed me never to bow my head," he murmured to the image. "You said that life would certainly push, but I was forbidden to break." He placed the photograph down gently. Then he opened the zipper of the suit bag. Inside lay a dark, clean, beautifully maintained three-piece suit. He touched the fabric slowly, reverently, as if it were a living thing. "This suit," he said softly, You carried me to places I had only dreamed of seeing. His phone suddenly buzzed sharply. Suddy stood up quickly, startled, as though caught performing a forbidden act. He checked the screen. It was a message from Adon. *, don't forget my birthday is next week. You will arrive early. Sadek stared at the text message for a considerable time. Then, he typed his response. Yes, ma. He dropped the phone back onto the bed and sat down again. For a fleeting few seconds, a familiar shadow of doubt attempted to creep into his heart. What if she is right? He wondered. What if I only manage to embarrass myself? He immediately stood up and faced the mirror once more. Slowly, deliberately, he straightened his shoulders, pulling himself to his full height. No, he countered firmly. I never embarrassed myself before. I refuse to start now. The following morning, Suddy arrived at the house exceptionally early, as was his unwavering routine. He washed the SUV thoroughly, wiped down the leather seats, and carefully checked the tire pressure. Adon emerged from the house talking loudly on her phone. Yes, every single detail is finalized, she announced grandly. The hall is secured. The guest list is comprehensive. This birthday is going to single-handedly shake Lagos. She ended the call and looked directly at Suddy. You, she said, snapping her fingers sharply. Did you understand what I discussed yesterday? Yes, ma. Suddy replied. You are attending my birthday, she repeated slowly, articulating the words as if explaining a complex theory to a slow child. Do not disgrace me. I understand, ma. Suddy confirmed. Adon rolled her eyes dramatically. You better. As they drove out, Adon spoke incessantly about the party, the venue, the catering, the status of the guests, and the immense importance of the event. You need to understand, she instructed, adjusting her hair in the mirror. People are flying in from everywhere. Very important people. You must not speak out of turn. Simply offer a respectful greeting and maintain absolute silence. Yes, ma. Do not eat like you are famished, she added harshly. And do not ask questions of anyone. Yes, ma. She looked at him critically through the rearview mirror. Why do you perpetually sound like a robot, always saying yes? Suddy met her eyes in the reflection for a brief second. Because that is my designated job, ma. Adon smiled, a look of smug satisfaction crossing her face. At least that much you comprehend. Later that day, Adon scheduled a meeting with her friends at an upscale cafe. Suddy waited outside in the car. Inside, Bisola and Tola were already seated. Adon, Bisola called out. We were just moments ago discussing your driver. Adon laughed and took her seat. That man is going to provide us with the free comedy we desperately need. Tola leaned forward excitedly. Is he genuinely going to show up? Yes, Adon confirmed. I personally insisted. Bisola's smile widened unnaturally. I cannot wait. I will position myself perfectly where I can see his every reaction. Tola added with anticipation. I just pray he doesn't have the audacity to wear his hideous work uniform. Adon waved her hand dismissively. Even if he somehow manages to borrow a decent suit, the shame will still be evident. They shared another synchronized bout of laughter. Outside, Suddy sat quietly, his gaze fixed on the cafe door. He could see their mouths moving rapidly through the tinted glass. He knew without doubt that they were talking about him. His phone buzzed again. This time, the message was from an unknown number. Hello, Suddy. This is Kola. We trained together years ago. Someone sent me your picture online. Are you still modeling? Suddy's heart gave a sudden, hard thump. He typed a slow response. I stopped. I drive now. The reply was immediate. Driving does not eradicate talent. If you ever find yourself needing anything at all, call me. Sadek stared at the message, then decisively locked his phone. That evening, after finishing his duties, Suddy did not head directly home. He stopped at a small, unassuming tailor shop. The external signboard was old and faded. The proprietor was an elderly, meticulous man. Good evening, sir, Suddy greeted him. The tailor looked up from his work. Good evening, young man. How may I be of service to you? Suddy opened his bag and carefully produced the suit. "I need this adjusted to fit me absolutely perfectly," he requested. The tailor's eyes widened slightly in professional admiration. "This is a very fine suit." Suddy nodded. "It holds immense significance for me." The tailor smiled warmly. "Then we shall treat it with the respect it deserves." As Sadiq walked out of the shop, the sun was once again sinking below the horizon. The city lights began their nightly, vibrant glow. Back at home that night, Sadiq sat on his bed, staring intensely at the plain wall. "This invitation was clearly orchestrated for my public humiliation," he articulated softly into the stillness. "But I will not allow it." He lay back slowly, his eyes wide open, unblinking. In a vastly different part of the city, Adon lay upon her massive, luxurious bed, smiling as she reviewed architect renderings of the event hall. She whispered to herself, "This birthday is going to be utterly unforgettable." Both Suddy and Adon Bello were correct, but they were predicting two entirely distinct, mutually exclusive versions of the future. The day of the opulent birthday party finally arrived. From the early hours, Adon's mansion was a hive of organized chaos. Event workers hurried in and out. Makeup artists arrived with enormous, elaborate cases. Hairstylists followed, dragging long bags of equipment. Everyone greeted Adon with overly polite, softened voices and anticipatory smiles. "Good morning, Ma. Happy birthday in advance, Ma." Adon sat regally on a tall stool in front of a mirror, dressed in a silk robe, while a stylist worked on her elaborate hairdo. "Yes, yes," she said, impatiently waving her hand. "Ensure everything is executed to perfection. I absolutely forbid any single mistake today." Outside, Suddy stood patiently beside the polished SUV, waiting as always. Adon eventually emerged, dressed in a scintillating, expensive gown, shining so brightly she looked like she demanded reverence from the very sun. "Suddy," she called out. "Yes, Ma," he replied. "You will drive me to the venue, and then you are to go immediately back home," she commanded. "Do not arrive too early. Come later. I do not want guests seeing you mingling before the main event." Sadiq nodded calmly. "All right, Ma." She looked at him again, a sharp, assessing look that felt like a command. "And remember, dress well. Don't disgrace me or the invitation. You are representing me, Sadiq." "Yes, Ma." As they drove towards the high-end district, Adon spoke non-stop, her voice vibrating with excitement about the lavish affair she had orchestrated. "Today is not for mistakes," she emphasized. "People are coming from everywhere, the city's elite, the big people. You know how Lagos society is. Everything is scrutinized." "Yes, Ma." She smiled to herself, a smug, satisfied expression. This party, she calculated, will be talked about in influential circles for years to come. They arrived at the massive event hall well before noon. The sheer scale of the place was overwhelming, a cathedral of celebration. White and shimmering gold decorations saturated the space, reflecting off highly polished marble floors. Long, ornate tables stood in precise military rows. Expensive floral arrangements were everywhere, releasing a heavy, sweet perfume. The lighting was meticulously planned, bright, clean, and flattering. Adon stepped out of the tinted car and inhaled deeply, her smile wide and proprietary. "This is it," she declared with fierce pride, surveying her domain. She then turned to Sadiq, her tone abruptly shifting to dismissiveness. "Go. I will see you later tonight. And Sadiq, be punctual." Sadiq watched her walk inside, instantly enveloped by staff and guests already arriving, everyone calling her name, competing for her immediate attention. He quietly drove the car away, the polished surface reflecting the dazzling lights of the hall. Hours later, the sun had fully surrendered to the evening. The immense hall began to fill slowly, deliberately, with a stream of highly anticipated guests. Outside, a symphony of luxury vehicles lined the street, forming an expensive guard of honor. Music, sophisticated and mellow, played softly in the background. People dressed in shimmering silks and sharply tailored suits walked in, their laughter bright and their greetings effusive. Adon stood strategically near the center of the hall, receiving her guests with the regal air of a monarch holding court. "A welcome. Thank you for coming. You look absolutely beautiful, darling." Her closest friends, Bisola and Tola, positioned themselves loyally near her. Bisola scanned the crowd, visibly impressed. "This place is already full, Adon. Look at the crowd." Adon smiled proudly, crossing her arms. "As it should be." Tola leaned in conspiratorially, lowering her voice. "So where is our main attraction? The star of the show?" Adon threw back her head and laughed. A loud, deliberate sound. "Relax. He will come. Let him suffer small first. The anticipation must be agonizing for him." They laughed together, a shared moment of cruel anticipation. Time passed. More and more guests poured in. Staff circulated with silver trays laden with plates of exotic finger foods. Drinks flowed freely, champagne and top-shelf spirits glistening under the light. Soon, some of the guests, who were in on Adon's little joke, began to ask the inevitable questions. "Madam, happy birthday," a high society woman said, presenting her cheek for a kiss. "But where is your driver? Maybe he borrowed clothes that don't fit and is fighting with the zipper." Bisola laughed, a sharp, quick sound. "Or maybe he is still practicing how to greet rich people without sweating through his collar." Tola added, sipping her wine. "He will probably call you for help," claiming his car broke down. Adon checked her phone dismissively. No missed calls. She allowed a slow, vicious smile to form. Let him come when he wants. The longer he waits, the more agonizing it will be for him when he finally has to face all these eyes. Inside another, quieter part of the city, Sadek stood perfectly still in front of a full-length mirror. The modest room was silent, a world away from the thumping music of the event. He was dressed in his custom three-piece suit. The tailor had done an exceptional job. The fabric felt rich, the suit fitting him like it had been molded for his body alone, emphasizing his height and broad shoulders. His dark leather shoes were polished to a mirror shine. His hair was meticulously neat, every strand in place. He looked at himself, not with vanity, but with careful assessment. "You can do this," he said softly to his reflection, his voice low and steady. He adjusted the collar of his crisp white shirt and took a deep, centering breath. His phone buzzed, startling him slightly. A message from Adon. "Where are you? Don't be late. Everyone is asking." Sadek read it once and typed back calmly, deliberately. "I am on my way, ma." Back at the hall, Adon triumphantly showed the message to her friends. "See," she announced, "he is coming." The little fool. Bisola clapped lightly, leaning back in her chair. "Good. I was getting bored with the small talk." The music grew louder, signaling the formal commencement of the evening's main events. The master of ceremonies seized the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, his voice echoing across the marble floors. "Let's celebrate the birthday queen of the night." Cheers and whistles filled the hall. Adon danced slowly, gracefully, enjoying every flash of the cameras and every eye trained on her. After a brief but dramatic dance, she returned to her opulent seat, breathing lightly. She looked around again, her eyes narrowing. "Still no Sadek," she hissed impatiently. "Where is he?" Tola whispered back. "He said he is coming. Maybe traffic is bad." Adon frowned slightly. Another friend, Sola, joined their group. "People are still asking about your driver, Adon. Is the suspense part of the show?" Adon laughed again, forcing a brittle sound. "Tell them to wait. The grand entrance is always worth the wait." More time passed. Guests began to settle down, conversation groups forming across the hall. Bisola leaned in again, a slight edge of worry in her voice. "I hope he does not disappoint us, Adon." "He won't," Adon assured her, her voice heavy with certainty. "Disappointment is his nature. He's designed to fall flat." Then, the main hall door opened slightly as a few catering staff walked in with fresh trays. Everyone glanced briefly, then looked away. Adon sighed dramatically, rolling her eyes. "This man is truly wasting my precious time." She picked up her phone and called Sadik directly. The phone rang once before Sadik answered calmly. "Yes, Ma. Where exactly are you?" she asked, her voice sharp with ill-concealed anger. "I am close, Ma," he replied, his voice even. "You better be," she snapped. "And don't come looking foolish." "Yes, Ma." She ended the call abruptly and shook her head, sighing for her friend's benefit. "Imagine, still stressing me on my birthday. The audacity." Bisola smiled reassuringly. "The wait will be worth it." Suddenly, the music volume dropped. Not because the DJ planned it, but because the spontaneous murmuring of people near the door caused a collective hushed moment. Small whispers rippled across the vast hall like a spreading current of wind. Adon noticed the change immediately. She turned slowly, her brow furrowed. "What is happening?" she demanded. Bisola's eyes were locked on the entrance, unblinking. Tola leaned forward, half standing from her seat, trying to peer over the crowd. Then, the entire massive double door was pulled open fully. The room began to quiet down completely. Heads turned in unison, and phones slowly lifted into the air. Adon felt a strange, tight knot form in her chest, an emotion she couldn't immediately identify. She stood up, her eyes fixed on the illuminated doorway. For one suspended moment, absolute silence reigned. The door remained open, framed by the bright lights, and someone stepped inside. The hall went utterly silent. The person who stepped inside was Sadik. For an eternal second, nobody moved, frozen by the sight. The music remained a low, almost imperceptible hum. The lights stayed brilliant, yet the hall felt utterly frozen, as if time itself had paused just to observe this entrance. Sadik walked in slowly, deliberately, with unhurried grace. He did not rush, nor did he drag his feet. He was wearing a dark, midnight blue three-piece suit that fit him with impossible precision. The jacket draped perfectly over his shoulders, conveying strength without bulk. The trousers fell clean and sharp to the tops of his gleaming shoes. His white shirt was crisp, his silk tie immaculate. Under the hall's intense lighting, his shoes shone like black mirrors. He did not look around nervously, like someone lost or out of place. He did not bend his head in deference. He walked straight into the heart of the room, his gaze level. Whispers started at the door and then spread like a brushfire through the hall. "Who is that? Is he a celebrity? I swear I've seen him somewhere before." Phones lifted quietly, instantly seeking photographic evidence. A few camera flashes popped without warning, impatient to capture the moment. Sadik kept walking, his gait measured. At the center of the hall, Adon stood stiffly, a statue of shock. Her mouth opened slightly, then snapped shut. Her triumphant smile vanished so quickly it was as if it had never existed. Bisola grabbed her arm tightly. "Wait," Bisola whispered, her voice laced with disbelief. Is that your driver?" Adon could not answer. Tola leaned forward, her eyes wide with amazement. "No, that can't be him. Absolutely not." Sadik took another step. Another. The space around him seemed to open up naturally. People moved aside without being asked, clearing a path for him. Some smiled at him with genuine warmth. Others simply stared in shock. Adon's heart began to beat wildly, a frantic drum against her ribs. "That's not possible," she muttered under her breath. "That's not how he looks. His face, his posture." Bisola whispered again, her voice hushed with realization. "Adon, that is Sadik." Adon swallowed hard, the denial a reflex. "No," she insisted. "No, no, no." Sadik stopped a few steps into the hall, having commanded the room's attention. He looked around calmly, not with arrogance, but like someone taking in a room where he was an expected, valued presence. His eyes moved slowly, neither greedy nor scared. Then his eyes met Adon's. For a brief moment, everything between them flashed in the sudden proximity. Every insult, every condescending laugh, every time she had talked down to him. Sadik's face remained utterly unchanged, impassive. He gave a single, polite nod. "Good evening, Ma," he said. His voice was calm, clear, and perfectly steady, cutting through the heavy silence. People immediately surrounding them heard the address. "Ma!" someone whispered in confusion. Bisola's mouth dropped open. Adon forced a laugh that sounded utterly artificial and wrong. "Sadik," she said loudly, projecting a false cheer. You came." "Yes, Ma," he replied. "Happy birthday." Silence descended again following his simple words. Then, someone, far to the side, started clapping. Slowly, uncertainly. Another person joined. Soon, a smattering of applause spread. Confused, perhaps, but undeniably impressed. Adon felt her knees weaken slightly beneath her opulent dress. She grabbed the back of her velvet chair for support. Tola leaned close and whispered fiercely, "Why does he look like this? What did he do?" Adon hissed back, equally low. "I don't know. I told him to borrow something decent, not look like a movie star." A woman nearby turned to her friend, fanning herself lightly. "That man is incredibly handsome." Another whispered, "His walk. Did you see his walk? He moves like he owns the city." Sadik took a few more steps forward, allowing the moment to dissipate naturally. A man in a smooth cream suit, clearly a man of status, stepped out of the crowd and smiled warmly at him. "Good evening," the man said, extending his hand. "Welcome." "Good evening, sir," Sadik replied, taking the hand and shaking it firmly. The man nodded with instant respect. "You look incredibly sharp." "Thank you, sir." Adon watched the simple, respectful exchange, her stomach tightening into a painful knot. "That man doesn't greet me like that," she muttered, her voice brittle. "He certainly doesn't talk to me like that." Bisola did not answer. Her eyes were still fixed on Sadik, an uncomfortable fascination growing on her face. Another elegantly dressed woman stepped closer to Sadik, smiling wide and bright. "Are you one of the invited guests?" she asked, her tone flirtatious. "Yes," Sadik confirmed politely. "Oh," the woman laughed softly, fluttering her eyelashes. "You look amazing." "Thank you," he replied, entirely unfazed. She giggled, touching her perfectly styled hair. "Please, can we take a picture? Just one?" Sadik hesitated for a second, then nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "All right." The camera flashed. Adon's breath caught in her throat. "What in God's name is happening?" she whispered, feeling a cold dread wash over her. Tola shook her head slowly, her own confusion evident. "This is not what we planned, Adon." The MC, who still held the microphone, looked visibly confused by the shift in attention. He managed slowly. "Welcome. Welcome, young man. Please make yourself comfortable." Sadik nodded courteously and began to move toward the sitting area. As he passed directly by Adon, she spoke quickly, desperate to assert her authority. "Sadik," she said in a low, urgent voice, forcing a painful smile. "You didn't tell me you had this kind of suit." Sadik looked directly at her. "You didn't ask, Ma," he replied gently. The words were simple, factual, yet they landed with the crushing weight of an accusation. Adon's frozen smile finally cracked. Bisola stared after Sadik as he walked away, her gaze lingering on his retreating back. "Since when is he this tall?" she asked quietly, almost to herself. Tola replied, still dazed. "Or this calm." They watched, powerless, as Sadik took a seat at a previously empty table near the periphery. Almost instantly, two beautiful women glided over and joined him. "Can we sit here?" one asked sweetly. "Yes," Sadik said. They smiled widely and settled in. Adon's chest tightened painfully, a fierce sense of proprietary violation washing over her. "This is my party," she hissed under her breath. "Why is absolutely everyone looking at him?" Bisola offered no response. She was too busy watching Sadik laugh lightly at something one of the women had said. "That laugh," Bisola murmured, "is actually quite nice." Adon turned sharply, rage flashing in her eyes. "Bisola!" Bisola blinked, startled. "What? You're staring," Adon accused. Bisola quickly looked away, suddenly embarrassed. "I was just surprised, that's all." Across the hall, a group of businessmen whispered amongst themselves. their conversation clearly audible over the low music. That guy has presence. He looks exactly like a runway model. Who invited him? Someone answered, the celebrant. He's her driver. Laughter followed, but it was not mocking Sadik. It was sheer disbelief directed at the situation. Adon overheard the exchange and felt a terrible heat rise to her face. She marched determinedly towards Sadik's table. Sadik, she said loudly, forcing a smile that felt brittle. Come here. The women at the table looked up at Adon, their expressions guarded. Sadik stood calmly. Yes, ma. Why are you sitting way over there? She asked, the smile too wide, too forced. You should stay close to me. People may need you. Sadik nodded, his eyes meeting hers. All right, ma. He turned to the women. Excuse me. No problem at all, one of them said, still smiling at him. We will talk later. Sadik walked back toward Adon. As he stood beside her, the disparity between them felt starkly strange. He looked utterly confident, completely at ease. She, the host, suddenly looked flustered and unsure. Adon leaned closer and whispered urgently. What are you doing? Stop commanding attention. I am attending the party, Sadik replied softly, his face unreadable. She frowned, her voice tightening. Don't overdo it. I'm not, ma, he said simply. Bisola watched them, fascinated by the power dynamics that had reversed instantly. Sadik, Bisola said suddenly, offering a genuine, beaming smile. You clean up extremely well. Thank you, ma, he replied, acknowledging her compliment with a slight bow of his head. Her smile stayed longer than necessary, lingering on him. Adon noticed the blatant attraction. She laughed loudly, a desperate sound. Ah, he borrowed the suit, you know. Drivers are always borrowing things. Sadik said nothing, his silence heavy. A man nearby turned and asked, genuinely curious. Borrowed? From where? It looks bespoke. Adon waved her hand dismissively. You know, somewhere. A friend. The man nodded slowly, unconvinced, his eyes still assessing Sadik's impeccable fit. Music started again, louder this time, ushering in the dancing portion of the evening. Sadik stood quietly watching the dancers. A woman approached him again, her eyes sparkling. Would you like to dance? Sadik smiled politely. Maybe later. She laughed, not discouraged. I'll be waiting. Adon felt something precious and essential slip from her grip. This was not the night she had meticulously planned. Bisola leaned closer to Adon, her voice softer now, almost empathetic. Adon, you never told me your driver was like this. Adon snapped, her composure cracking. Like what? Bisola paused, searching for the right words. Like this, she finally said, gesturing vaguely towards Sadik, who was now engaged in a calm, focused conversation with two important-looking men who were listening to him with rapt interest. Adon watched them laugh warmly at something he said. For the first time that night, standing in the center of her own grand party, she felt utterly, humiliatingly small. And across the hall, as Sadik spoke and smiled under the dazzling lights, one undeniable truth became clear. The elaborate joke had violently changed direction, and it was no longer funny for the person who had planned it. The music swelled, and the party moved into full swing. People danced wildly. Glasses clinked enthusiastically. Laughter roared through the hall. But even amidst all the festive noise, something profound had shifted. The magnetic center of attention was no longer Adon, the celebrated birthday queen. Bisola noticed the tension. Ah, Bisola said softly, noting the crowd around him. People really like him, Adon. Adon forced another sharp laugh. They like novelty. It will pass. But it did not pass. Another beautiful woman joined the small circle around Sadik. Then another. Soon, a solid cluster had formed, with Sadik poised calmly at the indisputable center. Tola leaned close to Adon, her voice incredulous. Your driver is becoming the most popular person at your party. Adon snapped, her control gone. He is not my driver tonight. Tola blinked, confused. What do you mean? Adon quickly corrected herself, forcing a semblance of reason. He is a guest. Let him enjoy. But her voice utterly lacked conviction. Across the hall, one of the women smiled brightly at Sadik. "You're so calm," she observed. "Most men here are trying entirely too hard to impress." Sadik smiled lightly. "I'm just enjoying the night." She tilted her head, intrigued. "What do you do, if you don't mind me asking?" Sadik paused for half a second, the light glancing off his tailored jacket. "I drive," he said. Her eyes widened slightly. "You drive? Like, for fun? As a hobby?" Sadik shook his head gently. "For work." She stared at him, surprised, then laughed softly, delighted by the reveal. "I never would have guessed." Another woman jumped in, equally charmed. "Same here. You carry yourself so well, with such confidence." "Thank you," Sadik replied easily. A businessman standing nearby listened closely, his arms crossed. "You don't talk like most drivers I know." Sadik met his eyes, his expression thoughtful. "People are many things, sir. Work is merely one of them." The man nodded slowly, conceding the point. "True." Adon overheard that last, quietly profound statement. She stepped forward quickly, a sharp, proprietary smile plastered on her face. "Sadik," she said, cutting into his conversation. "Are you quite okay? You've been standing for quite a while." "Yes, ma," Sadik said calmly, turning his full attention to her. "You can sit," she added, her tone hovering between concern and command. "Or maybe help around." One of the women frowned, clearly defensive of Sadik. "Help around?" Adon laughed quickly, attempting to save the moment. "Oh, I mean, he likes to stay busy." Sadik looked directly at Adon, then back to the woman. "I'm fine," he assured the woman. The woman smiled back, possessive. "Good. Don't go anywhere." Adon felt the blood rush to her face. She turned away sharply, her shoulders rigid. "This is absolute nonsense," she muttered savagely. Bisola followed her closely. "Adon, calm down. Did you hear the way they talked to him?" Adon hissed, furious. "Like he belongs here." Bisola hesitated, then chose her words carefully. "Maybe he does." Adon spun around, her voice dangerously low. "What did you just say?" "I mean," Bisola corrected herself quickly, her eyes darting away. "People are just curious about someone new." Adon shook her head vehemently. This was supposed to be fun, a humiliation. From across the hall, a man with a heavy camera lifted it again. He was dressed in dark clothing and moved with the focused efficiency of a professional, always finding the best angle. He snapped another picture of Sadik. This time, as Sadik laughed at something, the shutter clicked. Sadik noticed and looked up. "Oh," he said. "Sorry. Did I block your shot?" The man smiled, lowering the camera slightly. "Not at all. You are the shot." Sadik blinked, surprised. "Me?" "Yes," the man confirmed, professional admiration in his voice. "You have a good look. Genuine presence." Sadik nodded politely. "Thank you." The man lowered his camera fully. "I post event photos online. People like faces like yours." "Okay," Sadik replied, still bemused. Another camera flash went off from a completely different angle. Adon saw it and her temper flared. "Why is that man taking pictures of him?" she asked Tola sharply. Tola shrugged helplessly. "Maybe he thinks he's important." Adon scoffed, clutching her glass. "Important because of my party." But the words sounded hollow, even to her own ears. The MC called for attention again. "Ladies and gentlemen, food is now served." People cheered and moved toward the lavish buffet tables. Sadik stood back, letting others pass politely. One of the women touched his arm again. "Come sit with us," she urged. Sadik hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Of course," she replied with a beaming smile. "You're part of the party now." He followed them to a table. Adon watched from a distance, gripping her drink so tightly her knuckles were white. "That seat," she whispered, her voice ragged. "That is where my most important clients sit." Bisola glanced at her. "You didn't reserve it, Adon." Adon stayed quiet, staring across the room. At the table, Sadik listened more than he spoke. When he did offer a comment, people instantly quieted down and listened intently. He smiled easily. He nodded, attentive. He did not boast, nor did he feel the need to explain his presence. That calm, understated power made people lean in closer, hungry for more. One of the women was quite serious now. You really should model. Sadek laughed softly, shaking his head. No, why not? She pressed. I don't think about things like that, he replied honestly. Another woman shook her head, impressed. You absolutely should. You have the face. And the walk, a man added, looking over from the next table. Sadek smiled again. A genuine, warm expression. Thank you. Across the hall, Adon sat down heavily, defeated. They are acting like he is superior to me, she stated flatly. Bisola looked deeply uncomfortable. No one said that, Adon. But they are thinking it. Adon snapped. She stood up suddenly, moving toward the DJ booth with a fierce determination. Turn up the music, she ordered the startled DJ. This place is becoming dull. The DJ obeyed instantly. Music blasted, and colorful lights flashed violently. But even with the increased noise and sensory chaos, the attention still flowed inexorably toward Sadek. A few minutes later, Sadek's phone vibrated discreetly in his pocket. He checked it quietly. A notification. Someone had tagged him in a photo. He opened it. It was the picture the professional man with the camera had taken. The caption read, "Who is this guy? New face in Lagos society." The photo already had dozens of likes. Sadek frowned slightly, then locked his phone. Adon noticed him looking at his screen. What is he checking? She demanded. Tola shrugged, entirely missing the gravity of the situation. Probably begging someone for a ride home. But Sadek's phone vibrated again, and then again, rapidly. He checked it once more. More likes, more comments flooding in. Asterisk fine man. Where did he come from? He looks like a model. Asterisk Sadek swallowed slowly, the attention disorienting him slightly. One of the women at his table noticed his expression. Everything okay? Yes, he said. Just messages. She smiled suggestively. Party pics already? He offered a light, controlled laugh. Across the hall, Adon felt a terrifying sense of inevitability twist inside her. She grabbed Bisola's arm fiercely. This is getting out of hand. Bisola remained silent, simply watching the scene unfold. Another vibration hit Sadek's phone. Then another. He stepped aside politely from the table and checked it. This time, a direct message came through from an unknown number. Asterisk hello, this is Kem. I saw your photo from the event. You have a very strong look. Asterisk Sadek stared at the message. Then another followed instantly. Asterisk, are you signed to any agency? Sadek's chest rose and fell slowly as he processed the message. He typed carefully, his hands steady. Asterisk no asterisk, the reply came back almost instantly. Asterisk we should talk. Right now. Sadek locked his phone and slipped it back into his pocket. He looked up. The hall looked exactly the same, but it felt radically different now. The laughter, the lights, the people. Something monumental had shifted. Adon watched him from across the room, her heart hammering faster for reasons she finally understood. Sadek was taking flight. The party continued, but somewhere between the booming music and the flashing lights, the night had stopped being about Adon. And Sadek's phone buzzed again, quietly, like the future knocking without asking for permission. The party slowly began to settle down, not from fatigue, but because the night had reached that soft moment when guests stopped dancing and started engaging in deep, intimate conversation. Shoes were kicked off under tables. Jackets were loosened. Laughter became slower and closer. Sadek stood near a quiet corner, holding a glass of water, allowing himself a moment of reflection. His phone stayed silent for a few minutes, resting after the sudden flurry of noise. Adon watched him from across the hall. She particularly disliked the profound calm on his face. It made her deeply uneasy. She leaned toward Bisola, trying to analyze his posture. Why is he standing like that? She demanded. Like he owns the place. Bisola shrugged, dismissing the worry. He's just standing, Adon. No. Adon snapped, her voice tight. Look at him. He's too relaxed. Bisola said nothing, sensing the impending disaster. Sadik's phone buzzed again. He checked it this time, slower than before, with a certain gravity. A message popped up. *Hi, this is Kem. I work with a major modeling agency. I hope you got my earlier message. Sadik's fingers froze on the screen. Another message followed immediately. I'm at the event now. I would love to speak with you for just a minute. Sadik lifted his head slowly, scanning the hall. Near the far side, close to a sweeping white wall, stood a woman in a simple, perfectly tailored black dress. She was not loud. She was not dancing. She watched the crowd quietly, with an intensely focused stillness, like someone counting silent, momentous steps in her head. When their eyes met across the distance, she subtly raised one hand in a small, distinct wave. Sadik's heart gave a heavy thump. He took a deep breath, the air suddenly thick, and walked toward her. As he passed Adon's table, she instantly noticed his movement. "Where is he going?" she asked sharply. Tola followed his direction with her eyes. "He's walking toward that woman, Adon. The one in black." Adon frowned, instantly suspicious. "Who is she?" "I don't know," Bisola said, shaking her head. "She's been standing there watching for quite a while." Adon stood up quickly and followed them, maintaining a careful distance, but close enough to hear. Sadik stopped directly in front of the woman. "Hello," he said politely. She smiled, a professional, measured smile that conveyed intelligence and purpose. "Hi, I'm Kem. Nice to meet you." "Sadik," he replied. "Likewise," she said. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "No," Suddy said quickly. "It's okay." Kem looked at him closely, then nodded, her expression serious. "You have a strong presence. It's impossible to ignore." "Thank you," Suddy said. She folded her arms gently, her gaze never leaving him. "Have you ever modeled before?" Sadiq hesitated, a long pause stretching between them. "Yes," he said. "A long time ago. Feels like another lifetime." Kemi's eyes brightened with confirmation. "I knew it," she breathed. "Your walk gives it away. It's too deliberate, too focused." Sadiq smiled lightly, a flicker of genuine amusement he hadn't shown in years. "Life happened." Kemi nodded slowly, understanding the weight of that simple phrase. "It always does." Adoran stood a few steps away, positioned by a potted palm, pretending to talk into an empty wine glass, but her ears were straining toward their conversation. Kem continued, her voice dropping slightly, but still carrying in the quiet hall. "I saw your picture online tonight. It's already moving fast. The reception is instant." Sadiq frowned slightly, a genuine concern crossing his face. "I didn't plan for that." "I know," Kem said. "That's why it's good. Authenticity sells." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "Would you be open to coming in for an audition? A proper test shoot?" Sadiq's chest rose and fell beneath his crisp white shirt. An audition? The word hit him like a door opening onto a forgotten landscape, a world he had forcibly sealed off. I drive now," he said carefully, stating his current reality as a shield. Kem smiled, a professional, gentle reassurance in her eyes. "Driving does not erase skill. It simply pays the bills." Adoran's breath caught, a tiny, audible gasp. What did she say? She whispered to herself, gripping the stem of the empty glass so tightly her knuckles whitened. Sadiq asked softly, the hope barely contained in his voice. "What kind of audition?" Kem replied, "A simple one, Sadiq. Just a casting call to see where you are now, where your potential lies." Sadiq nodded slowly, considering the risk and the reward. "Okay." Kem smiled wider, radiating satisfaction. "Good. I'll send you the details now." She pulled out her phone and, with practice speed, sent a message. Sadiq's phone buzzed immediately in his trouser pocket. Adoran clenched her fists, the forced pretense of her conversation dropping away. "This is nonsense," she muttered under her breath. "Utter nonsense." Kem added, looking Sadiq directly in the eye. "No pressure. Just come as you are. Don't change a thing." Sadiq smiled, a sense of rightness settling over him. "Thank you." They shook hands, a firm, professional grip. As Sadiq turned to walk away, Aderon stepped forward, her expensive heels clicking aggressively on the marble floor. "Excuse me," she said sharply, her tone demanding attention. "Who are you?" Kemi turned calmly, her posture relaxed but confident. "I'm Kemi, a creative director. And what are you doing with my driver?" Aderon's voice was laced with ownership and suspicion. Sadiq stiffened slightly, bracing himself for the inevitable confrontation. Kem looked from Aderon to Sadiq, then back to Aderon, acknowledging the possessive pronoun. "I'm talking to him." Aderon forced a loud, brittle laugh, one that didn't reach her eyes. "About what?" "Work," Kem replied simply, her voice devoid of inflection. Aderon's smile cracked, dissolving into a look of disbelief. "Work? He already has work." Kemi nodded, her gaze pointed. For now, the words hung heavy in the air, a silent threat to Aderon's carefully constructed hierarchy. Aderon laughed again, louder and more dismissive this time, trying to regain control of the narrative. "You people joke too much. You mistake a party for a professional venue." Kem smiled politely, a perfect blend of warmth and cold professionalism. "I don't joke with my work, Aderon." Sadiq stood quiet between them, feeling the two worlds collide over his head. Aderon turned to him sharply, her hostility now focused entirely on her employee. "Suddy, you didn't tell me you were looking for another job. You are highly disorganized." Sadiq met her eyes, the familiar deference giving way to a quiet authority. "You didn't ask, Ma." The same words again. Aderon felt her chest tighten, stung by his lack of apology and his steady gaze. Kemi checked her watch, signaling the end of the exchange. "I'll let you get back to the party. We'll talk soon, Sadiq." She nodded briskly at Suddy and walked away, disappearing into the crowd without a backward glance. Aderon grabbed Sadiq's arm and pulled him aside, dragging him toward a dim corner. "What was that?" she hissed, her voice barely contained fury. "She asked me to come for an audition," Sadiq said calmly, releasing his arm from her grip. "Audition for what?" Aderon snapped, disbelief coloring every syllable. "Modeling," he replied simply. Aderon burst out laughing, a harsh, uncontrollable sound that made a few heads turn. "Modeling? You?" "Yes, Ma," Suddy said, refusing to drop his gaze. She shook her head hard, the diamonds in her ears catching the light. "Don't let this party enter your head. Don't be fooled by the champagne and the bright lights." "It's not the party," Sadiq replied quietly, firmly establishing the truth. "It's my past." Aderon scoffed, the sound dripping with scorn. "Past? Please, that was a childhood fantasy, not a career path." She leaned closer, her voice conspiratorial and cruel. "Listen to me. Don't embarrass yourself. People say many things when they drink, especially at events like this." "They weren't drinking," Sadiq said. "They were working." Aderon straightened up, her body rigid. "Are you arguing with me? Are you contradicting your employer?" "No, Ma," Sadiq replied, his voice remaining level. "I'm just answering your question truthfully." She stared at him for a long moment, her eyes searching for a sign of weakness or apology, finding none. Then she turned away sharply, unable to bear the steadiness of his gaze. "This is not serious," she muttered, dismissing the entire interaction as a fleeting joke. The party ended hours later that night. Guests hugged and air-kissed. The valet line stretched long again. Staff cleaned quietly, efficiently erasing the evening's excess. Aderon left the hall without saying much, wrapped in a cold silence. Sadiq followed behind and drove her home. Inside the car, the silence was thick, filled with the unspoken tension of their exchange. Halfway through the drive, Aderon spoke, her voice cutting through the quiet. "Don't forget who you are, Sadiq," she said coldly, an unmistakable warning in her tone. Sadiq kept his eyes locked on the road, watching the beam of the headlights. "I know who I am, Ma." She scoffed again, a sound of utter contempt. "You are a driver, nothing more." Sadiq did not reply. The insult hung in the space between them, absorbed by the leather seats and the quiet engine hum. When they reached the house, Aderon got down without looking at him or offering a thank you. "Be at work early tomorrow," she commanded. "We have meetings downtown." "Yes, Ma," Suddy replied, watching her retreating back. That night, Sadiq did not sleep much. He sat on his bed, the room dark except for the glow of his phone screen, reading the audition message again and again. The address, the time, the simple, powerful words, "Come as you are," felt less like an invitation and more like a commission. The next morning, he woke up early, earlier than usual, driven by a new focus. He ironed his shirt slowly, pressing the wrinkles out with meticulous care. He polished his shoes until the leather shone like glass. He moved with a deliberate, almost ritualistic preparation. At work, Aderon watched him closely, suspicious of his buoyant mood. "You look too happy, Sadiq," she stated, her tone accusatory. "It's unsettling." "I'm fine, Ma," Suddy replied, his voice calm. "Don't forget your place," she warned, suspicion hardening her features. "You are paid to drive, not to dream." "Yes, Ma," he said. That afternoon, while waiting patiently in the car outside a high-rise corporate building, Sadiq's phone buzzed again, a familiar notification tone. Another message from Kemi. "Just a reminder, Sadiq, tomorrow by 10 a.m. Sadiq typed back slowly, careful not to hit the wrong key. "I'll be there." Aderon opened the car door suddenly, having completed her meeting, catching him mid-text. "Who are you texting?" she demanded, leaning in. "Someone, Ma," Suddy replied, locking the screen quickly. She frowned, her eyes narrowing in disbelief. "Someone or that woman, the one who thinks she can recruit drivers?" Sadiq paused, deciding this was the moment for honesty. "The audition is tomorrow, Ma." Aderon laughed sharply, a high-pitched, triumphant sound. "Good. Go and see. Go get it out of your system." She leaned closer, her eyes glittering with malice. "When you come back disappointed and humbled, don't cry to me." Sadiq nodded, accepting the challenge without flinching. "I won't." The next day arrived quickly, bringing with it a sense of inevitable destiny. Sadiq dressed simply and neatly, choosing clothes that were comfortable but spoke of quiet dignity. He arrived at the audition hall early, ahead of the designated time. Inside, bright, unforgiving fluorescent lights filled the space, reflecting off the polished floor. People rushed around with clipboards and headsets, a chaotic yet focused energy. Kemi stood near the front, effortlessly managing the flow. When she saw Sadiq, her professional facade broke into a genuine, welcoming smile. "You came," she said, relief evident in her voice. "Yes," he replied, taking a deep breath of the studio air. She handed him a small card with a number. "Let's see what you can do." Sadiq took a deep breath, pushing down the nerves that had accumulated over the past week. As he stepped forward onto the marked path, memories rushed back. The technical focus, the required intensity, the exhilarating silence before the applause. He walked slow, steady, every movement deliberate and confident. The room, full of chatter moments before, grew quiet. Someone whispered from the side, hidden in the shadows. "He's good." Another nodded slowly, impressed. "Very good. He has the line." After the short walk ended, Kemi smiled wide, clapping once, softly. "Welcome back, Sadiq," she said. Sadiq exhaled slowly, realizing he had been holding his breath since he walked through the door. That evening, Aderon sat in her lavish living room, scrolling absently through her phone, trying to relax after a stressful day. She paused. A familiar face filled the screen. Sadiq, captured mid-stride, confident, focused, captioned with words she did not like. The comeback of a forgotten star. The post was viral. She sat up straight, shock washing over her. "What?" she whispered, staring at the flawless image. Her heart dropped instantly, cold dread settling in her stomach, because deep inside she knew something definitive had started, and it would not stop simply because she willed it to. The next few days felt strange for Sadiq. Life did not change all at once, but it no longer stayed the same either. On Monday morning, Sadiq still woke up early. He still wore his simple shirt and trousers. He still arrived at Adiron's house before sunrise and cleaned the sleek black car until it gleamed. But something fundamental inside him had shifted. He was no longer just the driver waiting for instructions. Adiron noticed it immediately. "You are quiet," she said, scrutinizing him through the rearview mirror as she entered the car. "I'm always quiet, Ma," Sadiq replied, focusing on pulling out onto the road. "No," she said sharply. "This quiet is different. This one is arrogant." She studied him through the mirror, her eyes narrowed. "Did they call you again, those joke artists?" "Yes, Ma," Sadi said honestly, choosing the path of quiet truth. Adiron laughed, but it sounded thin, lacking its usual power. "These people don't rest, do they?" She crossed her arms, folding them defensively across her chest. "Don't forget your work, Sadiq. Don't confuse attention with income." "Yes, Ma," Sadiq replied, but even as he said it, his phone buzzed inside his pocket, resting against his thigh. At the traffic light, when Adiron was busy arguing into her phone, Sadiq glanced down, his heart thudding a quiet rhythm against his ribs. A message from Kemi. "Good news, Sadiq. They loved you." His heart skipped. Another message followed immediately. "They want to offer you a contract. The big one." Sadiq's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel, anchoring him to the present moment, even as his future spun violently into view. At the office, Adiron stepped out of the car and walked inside without saying thank you, as was her usual dismissive custom. Sadiq parked the car and waited. His phone buzzed again. "Can you come in this afternoon to discuss details?" Sadiq typed back slowly, deliberately. "Yes." That afternoon, Sadiq sat in a small office with stark white walls, a clean, modern space that felt a million miles away from Adiron's opulent, heavy decor. Kemi sat across from him with a thin folder on the table between them. "You did very well, Sadiq," she said, her voice filled with professional admiration. "They were impressed not just by your walk, but by your history." Sadi nodded. "Thank you." She slid the folder toward him. "This is the offer. It's substantial." He opened it carefully, his fingers brushing the smooth paper. Money, his name printed boldly, scheduled photo shoots across continents, runway shows in the capital cities. Felt profoundly unreal. "I still drive," Sadiq said quietly, lifting his eyes to meet hers. "I need time to make the transition, to handle my current obligations." Kem smiled, understanding the necessity of his current commitments. "We understand, Sadiq, but opportunities like this don't wait forever. They move quickly." Sadiq nodded again, absorbing the pressure and the promise. "I just need to think. One night." "Of course," she replied, pulling the folder back slightly. "But not too long." That night, Sadiq lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, the light fixture appearing blurry in the dimness. His phone rested on his chest, a heavy, consequential weight. He thought of his mother, the pride she had for his long-ago career. He thought of the old photos, the applause. Then he thought of Adiron, the insults, the sharp, dismissive laughter. The way she had stated his life was nothing but a car key. He sat up slowly, the decision solidifying in the dark. "I can't stay halfway," he whispered to himself. "I have to choose." The next morning, Sadiq arrived at work as usual. Adiron was already upset, agitated by external pressures. "Why is traffic bad today?" she complained as soon as she entered the car, slamming the door. "This city is incompetent." "I'll find another route, Ma," Sadiq said, pulling out into the gridlock. She sighed loudly, a sound of exaggerated suffering. "This city will kill someone eventually." As they drove, her phone rang. "Yes?" She answered sharply, her usual business tone. Her tone changed halfway through the call, shifting to surprise and a hint of worry. "Oh, really?" she said, her voice strained. "I'll get back to you." She ended the call and frowned, her fingers rubbing her temples. "What is it?" Sadiq asked carefully, sensing her vulnerability. "Nothing," she snapped, pulling the mask back into place. just business. But Sadiq noticed her fingers shook slightly as she placed the phone down. Later that day, Sadiq received another message from his new world. "We need your answer, Sadiq," Kemi wrote. "The schedule is tight." Sadiq took a deep, grounding breath, centering himself. He replied, his thumb hovering over the send button for only a second. "I accept." Within minutes, his phone rang, Kemi's number flashing on the screen. Her voice came through bright and happy, laced with professional triumph. "Welcome aboard, Sadiq. This is fantastic news." "Thank you," Sadi said softly, the weight of the moment settling on him. "You'll need to stop driving immediately," she added gently, her tone now turning serious. "This will take your full, undivided time. You're too visible for anything less." Sadiq closed his eyes for a second, marking the finality of the transition. "I know." That evening, Sadiq knocked on Adiron's office door, having parked the car for the last time. She looked up, surprised by the interruption. He never disturbed her private time. "What is it?" she asked curtly. "Can I speak with you, Ma?" he asked, standing tall in the doorway. She rolled her eyes, impatient. "Make it fast, Sadiq. I have paperwork." Sadiq stood straight, composing his thoughts. "I got a job offer. A real one." She laughed. A low, condescending chuckle. "Another joke, Sadiq? I thought we were past this." "No, Ma," he said calmly, cutting through her mockery. "I accepted it." Adiron's smile faded completely, replaced by an unsettling blankness. "Accepted what?" "A modeling contract," Sadi replied. Silence filled the room, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the hum of the air conditioning. "You're joking," she said slowly, her voice dangerously quiet. "No, Ma." Her face hardened, turning to cold fury. "So what exactly are you saying, Sadiq? Spell it out." "I'm resigning," Sadiq said, the words clean and firm. "I'll work till the end of the week to ensure a smooth transition." Adiron stood up so fast her executive chair moved back with a scraping sound. "You can't resign," she snapped, pointing an accusing finger. "I didn't give you permission. You have an obligation here." Sadi kept his voice steady, refusing to rise to her rage. "I don't need your permission, Ma. I am an employee, not a possession." Her eyes widened, truly shocked by his defiance. "Is this because of that ridiculous party? Is this revenge?" "No," Sadiq replied, shaking his head. "It's because of my life. The one I want to live." She laughed sharply, a sound of pure bitterness. "You think you are better now? You think you are suddenly above us?" "No, Ma," he said, meeting her fury with gentle resolution. "I just want more than what you allow me to have." Adiron pointed toward the door, her hand trembling slightly. "You will fail, Sadiq. You will be back here begging for your job in 6 months." Sadiq nodded, accepting the possibility, but not the certainty. "Maybe, Ma, but I have to try." She turned away in anger, refusing to look at him again. "Leave my office. Now." "Yes, Ma," Sadi said. That was the last time he ever called her that. The week passed quickly, marked by an unusual calm on Sadiq's part and simmering rage on Adiron's. On his final day, Sadiq returned the car keys to the front desk and thanked the security guard at the gate. He walked out onto the street without looking back. Adiron watched him leave from her tinted office window, hidden high above the street. She told herself she didn't care, that she was better off without him, but her chest felt strangely heavy, a sense of loss mingling with her pride. Weeks passed. Sadiq's life changed with astonishing speed. He attended fitting after fitting, standing for hours while designers draped fabric over him. He practiced walking on the runway, muscle memory returning stronger than before. He stood under blinding studio lights again. His face appeared online, then on smaller posters, then, shockingly, on massive billboards towering over the city highways. People started recognizing him on the street. "Are you Sadiq? The one from the magazine?" they asked. "Yes," he replied simply, still soft-spoken, still himself. Adiron noticed the change too, though she tried to ignore it. Her friends stopped calling as much, and when they did, their conversation felt strained. The Met meeting got cancelled. One afternoon, she sat alone in her vast, quiet living room, aimlessly scrolling channels. A fashion show played on the screen. Models walked one by one, severe and beautiful. Then the announcer spoke, his voice booming into the silent room. Next on the runway, the rising star, Suddy. Aderon froze, the remote control slipping in her hand. The camera zoomed in. Sadiq walked out, calm, confident, possessing a powerful grace. He owned the space. The audience clapped loudly, a roar she could hear clearly. Aderon's mouth opened slightly in disbelief. "That's him," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. Sadiq walked the runway like he belonged there, moving with an innate authority. Because he did. The show ended. Aderon turned off the TV slowly, deliberately. Her phone buzzed instantly. A message from Bisola, one of her closest friends. "Isn't that your former driver?" Bisola wrote, the question loaded with implication. Aderon did not reply. She sat in the silence, staring at the dark screen. The image of Sadiq's confident stride burned into her memory. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the small tragedy unfolding in her living room. And somewhere else, under bright lights and loud applause, Sadiq took a bow. Not as a driver, but as himself. Life did not slow down after that fashion show. It moved faster, relentlessly. For Sadiq, days became a blur, full of early mornings, endless fittings, blinding lights, and a constant rotation of new faces and international travel. He traveled from one place to another, sometimes not even knowing which day it was until Kemi or an assistant reminded him. But through all the noise, the glamour, and the chaos, he stayed internally the same. He still woke up early. He still spoke softly. He still listened more than he talked. Only now, people listened back, truly eager to hear his voice. One afternoon, Sadiq sat in a large studio waiting for the next setup. White walls, bright lights, cameras mounted everywhere. A woman fixed his jacket, meticulously smoothing the fabric, while another adjusted his collar. "Stand straight, Sadiq," one commanded. He did. "Relax your face, soften the jaw," another added. He breathed slowly and complied, finding the balance between intensity and ease. The photographer lifted his camera, checking the light meter. "Perfect," he said, focusing on Sadiq's eyes. Just like that, the camera clicked again and again, capturing moments of profound stillness. After the shoot, Sadiq sat quietly in a corner, scrolling through his phone. Messages poured in. People he had not spoken to in years, childhood acquaintances, people who never noticed him before the billboard. "Congrats. So proud of you. Remember me from school?" He smiled lightly, recognizing the pattern of human nature, and locked his phone. Across the city, Aderon's life moved in the opposite direction, contracting into quiet, strained isolation. Her mornings became quiet, too quiet. No more calls waking her up early with updates. No more assistants rushing around with coffee and schedules. No more driver waiting outside with the car already cleaned and warmed. She still had her substantial wealth, but she had lost something far more valuable: her uncontested status and respect. One morning, Aderon walked into her corporate office and noticed a strange shift in the atmosphere. The receptionist did not jump up quickly as she usually did. The greeting was slow, almost flat. "Good morning, Ma," the receptionist said without excitement, her gaze returning quickly to her monitor. Aderon frowned, sensing the indifference, but said nothing. Inside her office, she sat down and checked her emails. 2 major clients had canceled upcoming meetings, citing unforeseen scheduling conflicts. Another asked to reschedule indefinitely. She slammed her laptop shut in frustrated disbelief. "What is happening?" she muttered, the question ringing hollowly in the large room. Her phone buzzed. She picked it up quickly, hoping for good news. It was Bisola. "Aderon." Bisola said carefully, skipping the usual cheerful greeting. "Are you okay? I heard you left the event early." "Why wouldn't I be okay?" Aderon snapped, irritated by the implied concern. Bisola hesitated, choosing her words delicately. "Some people are talking, Aderon. About the driver. Talking about what? Aderon demanded, her voice rising. The old news? It's spreading, Bisola said, a note of warning in her voice. People are saying you openly mocked him when he was nothing but your employee. Aderon's chest tightened with a familiar combination of shame and defensiveness. I gave him work. I employed him. Yes, Bisola replied. But you also laughed at him, Aderon. And people don't forget that, especially when the person you laughed at is suddenly everywhere. Aderon said nothing, hanging up the phone abruptly. Later that day, Aderon attended a small business gathering, hoping to smooth over her reputation. She dressed impeccably. She smiled. She tried to act like nothing had changed, but the air around her was different. People greeted her, but they did not stay. They talked briefly, then politely moved away, drawn to other groups. She noticed whispers, eyes glancing at her, then quickly away. Then she heard it, a shard of conversation that cut through the background noise. Isn't she the one? The one that mocked that model, that driver guy, Sadiq? Aderon's hands shook slightly, gripping the edge of her glass. She turned and left the gathering early, the shame of being the subject of negative gossip overwhelming her business focus. That night, she sat alone in her living room. The TV played softly, but she was not watching. Her phone buzzed again, this time an email notification. Another message from a former client, terse and formal. We've decided to go in a different direction for the new campaign. She dropped the phone on the couch, exhausted by the realization that her cruelty had become a professional liability. Across the city, Sadiq stood on a balcony high above the city, looking at the thousand lights below. Kemi stood beside him, enjoying the quiet. You're doing well, Sadiq, she said, reflecting on his rapid success. I'm learning every day, Sadi replied. She smiled. People like you, they respond to your quiet strength. That's why it works, she said. The next week, Sadiq appeared on a billboard that dominated one of the city's busiest intersections. Big, clear. His name written boldly beneath his flawless face. People stopped their cars to look. Some took pictures. Sadiq passed by one day in a car with Kemi, seeing the massive image through the window. He stared quietly at the face that was his, yet somehow separated from him. I'm still me, he said to himself, a quiet affirmation. That same day, Aderon sat trapped in traffic on the opposite side of the highway and looked up, trying to escape the monotony. She saw the billboard, too. Her heart dropped, a sensation like falling from a great height. She stared at it for a long, agonizing minute. That used to be my driver, she whispered, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. The car behind her honked loudly, jolting her back to reality. She moved slowly, heavily. Later that evening, Aderon attended another event, smaller than before, fewer influential people. As she stood alone with a drink in her hand, trying to appear composed, she saw a familiar figure enter the hall. Sadiq. The room reacted instantly, like a wave. Heads turned. Smiles spread across faces. People walked toward him immediately, drawn by his fame and presence. Aderon froze, hidden in the shadow of a pillar. Sadiq had not seen her yet. He greeted people politely, shaking hands, smiling softly, radiating a gentle confidence. Someone touched his shoulder, full of warmth. We're glad you came, Sadiq, they said. Thank you, Sadiq replied. Aderon's chest tightened, watching as people gathered around him. Laughing, asking questions, treating him with the profound respect she once reserved only for herself. The very respect she had denied him. Sadiq finally noticed her. Their eyes met across the crowded room for a second. Neither moved. Then Sadi nodded, not with pride, not with anger, just a simple, acknowledging nod. Good evening, he said, walking closer, leaving the small crowd behind him. Aderon swallowed hard, trying to regain her voice. Good evening, Sadiq. A heavy silence sat between them. She searched his face for something. Pride, revenge, the kind of mockery she had once inflicted. She found none. Only calm. You're doing well, she said quietly, acknowledging the undeniable reality of his success. Yes, Sadiq replied. Thank you. She hesitated, struggling to formulate the apology she owed him. I didn't know you had this talent. Sadiq looked at her calmly, without judgment. Most people didn't, Ma. She nodded slowly, the truth a bitter pill. I guess I was wrong about you. Sadiq did not smile. He did not frown. He simply stated a universal lesson. Life teaches all of us. Adoran. She looked down at the polished floor, unable to maintain eye contact. I thought inviting you to the party that day would be funny. A way to remind you of your place. Sadiq nodded gently. I know. She looked up quickly, her desperation showing. Do you hate me, Sadiq? Sadiq thought for a moment, genuinely weighing his feelings. No, he said, the answer clear and final. But I learned from you. She frowned, confused. Learned what? How not to treat people, he replied gently. The words hit harder than any anger ever could. Adoran looked away, tears stinging her eyes. Not of remorse for him, but of profound regret for her own actions. I'm sorry, she said. The words almost too low to hear, stripped of her usual arrogance. Sadi nodded once, accepting the gesture for what it was. I accept your apology. People began calling Sadiq's name from across the room, asking him to join them. He turned to leave. Take care, Adoran, he said. You too, she replied. She watched him walk away, surrounded by smiles and laughter, effortlessly moving back into the center of attention. The same hall, the same lights, but the roles had irrevocably changed. Weeks later, Adoran sat in her house, packing some files into a cardboard box. Her business had shrunk significantly, not gone entirely, but humbled. She moved slower now, thought deeper, her arrogance tempered by public and professional fallout. Sadiq's life, on the other hand, kept rising. More shows, more lucrative contracts, more travel, yet he never forgot where he came from. One morning, he visited his old street, walking through the familiar dust and noise. He greeted neighbors warmly. He smiled. Sadiq, someone shouted from a doorway. We saw you on TV. You're famous. He laughed, a rich, genuine sound. It's still me, Mama. That evening, he sat alone and looked at the old wooden box stored under his bed. He opened it, revealing the old photos, the memories, the suit bag that held his past. He looked at them, acknowledged them, and closed the box gently. The story had come full circle. The woman who mocked him lost her power and learned humility. The man who stayed quiet found his voice and his platform. And the joke that was meant to break him became the door that ultimately set him free. Sadiq stood up, looked into the mirror, and smiled softly. Not because he had won a battle, but because he had finally become exactly who he was meant to be.
My flat sings wipers to the sky. Melodies flows gentle and free, carrying dreams across the sea. In every note a piece of me, forever here in harmony. My flood sings wipers to the sky. Melodies flows gentle and free, carrying dreams across the sea. In every note, a piece of me, forever here in harmony. Music lives inside my heart. Music lives inside my heart.